Well, hello everybody. Welcome back. I'd like to take a brief moment of your time, and I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Skeet. I'm a 42-year-old single parent father. I have a daughter who's 15 years old. Her name is Rory. She's everything in my life. I live in a small town with her in northern Arizona. The town that we live in is Winslow, Arizona. And this town was made famous by the Eagles in their hit song, Take It Easy. Now in this video, I would like to talk about a certain amount of things or qualifications that I feel that I have that would make me a very good candidate for alone. And these things that I'll be talking about are in no particular order. They're just things that I'd like to discuss and raise awareness to. Now I'd like to talk briefly, before I get into this too deep, I'd like to talk about my childhood. When I was young, I had a brother, and we had a house fire, and my brother passed away. After this happened, my dad decided to choose alcohol and drugs, and he abandoned my mother and me. He moved to Kansas, and we stayed in Arizona. So I grew up with a single parent mother, and I've faced a lot of adversity in my life. Not just that alone, but many other things in my life. I'd like to talk about some of the characteristics that I have as an individual that I think would make me successful given the huge opportunity to go on such an epic show like Alone. First thing that comes to mind is my outdoor nature. I've always been an outdoorsy type of person. I'm an avid rock climber. Although it's been a while since I've hit the rock, work has kept me busy. But not only am I a rock climber, but a more specific type of description of the type of rock climber that I am is I am a lead climber. I can lead sport climbing routes, and I can also lead traditional climbing routes. The difference between sport climbing and traditional climbing is sport climbing has bolts already established in the route, and traditional climbing we place protective gear on the route, such as cams, nuts, things of that nature. Now why does this come into play? Why am I bringing this up? What in the world does this have to do with me trying to go on alone? I think this is an important thing to bring up, because to be a lead climber, you have to be a person of strong mental fortitude. You cannot be someone who is scared. You have to go above your last piece of protection, and sometimes that puts you in danger. And if you're not a strong-minded person, you'll never be a lead climber. Another attribute that I'd like to discuss is the fact that I'm a very patient person. I've been this way all my life. My job, in fact, I do a better job at work because of the fact that I'm patient. I'm a locomotive engineer. That's the technical term. But in reality, all I do is drive trains. And trains are like a big slinky. And it takes a lot of patience to keep these trains together, to handle the slack within the cars of the train. If you're an impatient person, you could easily rip a train in two pieces. Another thing about myself is I'm a fairly quiet person. I'm an extremely observant person. If I go into a room, I usually sit in an area where I can see everything that's going on in the room. That's just who I am by nature. Some people would say that I'm a slight bit shy. However, I don't feel that way. I just feel that I'm well educated, and sometimes I just choose not to talk to a lot of people. I'm a loner by nature. I like to be by myself. Because of the fact that I grew up with a single parent mother, I didn't have a father figure. And so a woman can only teach a young man so much. As a result of this type of childhood, I was unfortunately victim to a lot of bullying growing up in school. I got in a lot of fights, and that was hard. And I think a person in their life, when they face that type of adversity, has the ability to make one of two choices. Either one, they succumb to the pressure and become a weakling, for the lack of a better description, or two, they stand up to the adversity and decide to get tough. And I think being bullied as a child has made me strong, mentally strong. I'm not a weak-minded individual. The fact that my birth father left and abandoned my mother and me and had nothing to do with us in my life growing up made me decide at an early age that I do not like to quit things. I don't give up on things because he gave up on me. It's almost like I'm trying to prove to myself that I will never do what he did. I have social anxiety issues, not in a negative way. And what I want to describe that as is, first thing I want to get out is that I have an amazing family, an amazing support group. I have amazing friends and amazing people in my life. And when we get together for occasions, such as holidays, maybe Thanksgiving, maybe Christmas, I get a little bit nervous being around all these people. Even though they're my family and they're amazing people and I love them to death, I still get a little bit uneasy being around people. I'd rather be left by myself. And I love my family more than anything. I'm always open to try new food ideas, new food opportunities. If I see something that comes out that's a new type of food or something like that, I'm always open to try it. I don't have these reservations like some people do, thinking, oh, I'm not going to try that because it might not taste good. No, I'm the complete opposite. I'm actually very outgoing in that aspect. And I think that would be something good for me to take on this show alone, because I won't be drawn back to try new things. You'd be amazed at some of the things that I'd probably consume to stay alive out there. I would describe my survival skills in two ways: part primitive and part modern. My primitive skills would be friction fire, and my modern skills would be some of my shelter building and some of my fire building techniques that I like to use. Another strong suit that I have going for me on being a potential candidate for this show is the fact that I'm a very successful YouTuber. I have a good channel with over 40,000 subscribers. I have over 600 videos. I have over 10 million video views of if you count all my videos put together. I'm really good with cameras. I'm not afraid to put myself in front of the camera. I'm not afraid to put myself out there for other people to enjoy my work, or my entertainment, if you wish to say it that way. So I think that I would do very well at filming and documenting my
pretty interesting looking. Something like this right here.
experience out there in Patagonia.
For what we're needing.
I work on a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, on-call, no schedule type of job. And sometimes this affects a sleeping pattern. I do not have a normal sleeping pattern. I don't go to sleep every night. Sometimes I sleep during the nights, and sometimes I sleep during the days. It just depends on what type of work schedule I have at the moment that I get called. It's not uncommon for me to work all night long, from sundown till sunup, or vice versa, from sunup to sundown. And I think this would be a good quality for me to take onto the show alone, because of the nature that it would not be uncommon. It wouldn't surprise me at all if I did some of my activities at night and maybe slept a little bit during the day. I'm not opposed to that. I have an excellent understanding of fire and what it takes to make fire. In fact, I've studied the fire triangle quite a bit, and I've actually talked about a fire diamond. I'm excellent with the ferro rod. Ferro rod is one of my favorite tools to use to create fire. In fact, I like that even better than matches. And it's an acquired skill to learn, and I'm very, very good at it. I'm good with friction fire. If you want to get specific about that, we can talk about a bow drill fire. Over time, I've learned the importance of different types of woods that are useful for bow drill. I've found that cottonwood is a good wood for a bow drill fire. I've also found that aspen is a good wood for bow drill fire, and those two woods are very prevalent in the area where I live, so I use those quite often. I'm also exploring and experimenting with the hand drill fire, and I like to use cottonwood as my hearth board, and I use mullein stems as my drill. Sometimes I have success, but honestly, most times I don't with the hand drill fire. I'm still learning that technique. Now, when we went on vacation a couple years ago, we went to Hawaii, and I had the ability to try hibiscus wood using a plow technique of friction fire, and that was amazing. I had success, and since then I've used cottonwood to use that same technique, and I've had a quite successful run using the plow technique. I really like that with cottonwood. Another attribute that I would take with me onto the show is the fact that I have common sense. I like to think things through before I act, and sometimes that's been a bit of a downfall for me, in the fact that I've been labeled at times as a mild procrastinator, but that's only, once again, because I like to think things through and do the job right. So I think common sense is a good thing for me. I'm not afraid of animals. If I saw eyes in the night, or heard sounds, or walked upon some animal scat, or maybe some bones or a kill or something like that, those types of things would not bother me. I've seen people freak out when they see things like that, and it just doesn't affect me like them. I'm not afraid to hunt. I've seen some of the show where there's contestants on the show that they don't want to hunt, and they would rather try to forage and pass up the hunting option. I can tell you this, if I'm given the opportunity to hunt, I promise you I will go for it. Another thing about me, and this kind of falls into the primitive side of my survival skills, is the fact that I respect Mother Nature tremendously. When it comes to hunting animals, I respect the animal. I've always felt like when it comes to hunting, I believe that you're connected with that animal, and that animal's given his life for your nourishment, and as a result of this sacrifice that he's given, you have to honor that animal in a high level, to the point where you have to give him a clean kill. Make him die quickly. He shouldn't suffer. I also believe that when it comes down to cutting resources down, such as trees to build a shelter, I've watched a lot of show, and these people are taking down all kinds of trees, 100 limbs, and they're using 3 of them to build their shelter. And I think this is completely ridiculous. I think people should account for approximately how many sticks they're going to need to build their house, and go cut those accordingly, because you can always go back and cut more. But once you cut too many, you've simply just cut too many. If you've destroyed that area for the rest of the time. I'm not against Mother Nature. I've seen a lot of people go out there and try to say, oh, I'm going to dominate Mother Nature. I'm going to win. She's not going to get it over on me. And I don't think that those type of people with that type of mindset have success, because they look at it like it's a battle that they have to win. You know, we need to learn as human beings to coexist with Mother Nature. We can't just think that we're going to go out there and plow everything down and kill everything that walks. We have to respect Mother Nature, and that's something that I'm very strong about. Cooking. When we talk about bringing meat home from the hunt, cooking. I know several ways. You know, I've thrown meat right on the coals of the fire before, and surprisingly, you'd be amazed to know that it doesn't stick as much as you might think, and it's not as dirty as you might think. It's actually a pretty good technique. I also understand about, you know, if you create jerky out of that meat, that it'll last longer, you know, a couple of weeks the jerky will last, versus cooking the meat, which would only last a couple of days. So jerking the meat is a good option. And the process that I like to do to jerk my meat is I like to build a tripod and either put debris around the tripod, or if I have a tarp available, I'll put that around the tripod, and I'll raise the meat real high so that it does not come in contact with the flames of the fire, and I'll build the fire under there and let the smoke hit that meat for about 6 to 7 hours. And that's how I like to jerk my meat. It's a very good option. If you want to talk about fishing, I'm very good at fishing. I am not afraid. You know, the fact that I'm a patient person makes me a decent fisherman. Now, I'll be honest, I don't go out and fish all the time, but when I do, I usually have pretty good success. I also, you know, I talked about jerking meat earlier. We can also do these types of techniques with fish. We can preserve the fish by creating fish jerky. Another thing that we can do to preserve our fish is to not consume them until we're ready to. So in other words, if we catch the fish, maybe we could put them in some sort of live trap where they don't die right away, but they stay alive until we need to use them as to nourish our bodies. So that's a good option to think about. Now when it comes to trapping, This is a skill set that I'm pretty good at. I like to use deadfall traps. I'm really good with the figure 4 trap. I'm pretty good with the Paiute deadfall, although that's a new technique that I've just started to work on. I'm good with the split trigger, and I'm always willing to learn new trapping options. I'm good with snares, things of that nature. I could make a fish basket and catch crayfish or minnows or fish or whatever the case may be. And I'm also a very good knowledge and understanding of how to make a net that can be useful for either catching fish or holding fish or catching game or things like that. So making a net is not difficult for me. When it comes to primitive shelter or modern shelter, I'm good at making both of those. You know, a primitive shelter might be a lean-to type design where I have a ridge pole up between 2 trees, and then I lean ceiling joist, for the lack of a better term, and throw a bunch of debris on the top. I like primitive shelter. A modern shelter might be running a piece of parachute cord between 2 trees as a ridge line and then putting a tarp over that, either an A-frame configuration, we could use a plow point configuration, or we can also use a lean-to type configuration. And what would depend on which one I would choose to use is the type of weather that we're having outside. One of my favorites though is the plow point. Now when I compare modern shelter such as tarps and things like that to primitive shelter like a debris hut, I honestly like the primitive shelters better. They take resources, but usually when I build a shelter I try to get by with resources that are already down and already dead so I don't have to damage the landscape. And I like primitive shelter because when I put all that debris on there, that's like an added layer of insulation. Which brings up another factor. That insulation of debris stops one of the heat loss mechanisms known as convection. And when I put a big pile of debris under my bed, that stops conduction. Which leads me to my next point. I have a good knowledge of the heat loss mechanisms, and I know how to regulate my body's core temperature. Knowing this gives me the ability to control, manipulate, and use these mechanisms for my personal gain. That's a good thing to know for me. I'm also very knowledgeable of the survival rule of threes. 3 hours of extreme exposure could kill you. 3 days without water, you could die from dehydration. 3 weeks without food, I'm saying 0 food, you could die from starvation and things of that nature. I'm a humble person. I'm a very fast learner. I learn to adapt. And when I find a challenge, I try to overcome those challenges, and I'm pretty good at doing that. One thing that I notice when people go on the show, I think they go on the show with the wrong idea. I think they go on the show with the idea of, I'm going to put my eye on the prize. So they go on the show with one thing in mind, and that is to win that money. I don't think like that. Their destination is the money. My destination is the journey of being out there. I think about that, and I think about how much it relates to martial arts. A lot of people that show up thinking that they're going to get that coveted black belt never reach it. But people that enjoy the training regimen and they go to class every day and they train and they do their thing, those are the people that reach the black belt because they enjoy the journey. The journey is their destination, not the black belt. Now, I love my family very deeply. However, I'm not afraid to be apart from them, and they're not afraid to let me go. We're confident in our relationships, we have a good one. And my family's amazing. I also believe in failure as not being a negative thing. Sometimes I think failure creates positives. And I also believe that failure, a person can fail their way to success. And there's a lot of people in my life that are instrumental to me, and I see them as examples of failing their way to success. Some people, for example, might have not graduated high school. They don't even have a diploma, but yet they've lived their whole life and were a complete success story. Another example of failing your way to success might be if you try something and it doesn't work, you try again. And it doesn't work, you try again. And you keep trying until you figure out a way to overcome that obstacle that you're dealing with. Whether it's something in your life, whether it's in a relationship, anything like that. You can truly fail your way to success, in my opinion. Now, work ethic is another strong suit that I bring in. Remember earlier in this video where I talked about growing up with a single parent mother? Well, that taught me work ethic because I had to grow up early. I had to grow up young. I had to help my mother pay the bills, and that taught me work ethic. I've learned to earn my keep. And I think this is powerful going on alone as a potential candidate, because I'm not one of these people that thinks I'm going to take advantage of an opportunity that's given to me by some people are going to send me on vacation. I'm going to do everything for me, personal gain and all that, and put that on someone else's dime. I don't think like that. If I'm accepted to go on alone, it's not a camping trip for me. It's not a vacation for me. I believe in earning my keep. One more thing I want to talk about is the fact that I'm not Mr. Bushcraft. And now, Mr. Bushcraft is a generic term that I use for people that are know-it-alls. I'm not Mr. Woodcraft. What that means to me is that means I understand clearly that I have lots of skills, but also on the flip side of that coin that I have lots of skills yet to learn. And once again, that makes me humble. And I think some of these people that seem to talk the loudest about how much skills they have and how much they know, those are the people that show up and can't produce when they're put in this situation. Now, I also feel about pain, hunger, cold, discomfort, especially cold. I think that all of these things are temporary feelings. And I think us as individuals have the ability to choose whether we want to acknowledge these feelings or not. Now, in the past, there's been people on the show that have allowed these discomforts that, once again, are temporary. They've allowed these discomforts to make them quit because they wanted to go back to their lifestyle of comfort. Now, I've went out in the woods for 2 weeks at a time and didn't take much food, and I've had starvation for 2 weeks with minimal food. I've only had maybe 100 calories a day or something like that. Crazy. And I've lost weight, and I've felt starvation, and it wasn't very fun. But now I sit here nice and healthy, and I think back on that experience, and I think, you know what? That was something temporary in my life. And I think something like alone, I could develop a similar experience if given the opportunity to go on the show. I love my job. I'm a locomotive engineer. I drive trains. I love what I do. But also, it's a love-hate job. I hate my job because the management is terrible. I hate the way life is sometimes. It's like this big rat race, and everybody's just running around, and life is so involved with money. I can't stand it. My job is I work for a big company with big numbers of employees, and that's the key word right there. We are just a number, and no matter how much I love doing what I do, I can't stand my job. I'm just a number. Now, I'm not one of these types of people that panics easily. If I'm walking up on an accident on the side of the road, or some kind of crisis or health situation or something like that, or a fire, I don't necessarily panic. I've seen a lot of people get into situations and just freak out. And I think people like that freak out because they haven't faced any real adversity in their life. So this thing that they're going through at that moment of time, that experience that they're going through, they freak out. They don't know how to handle it. I've faced a lot of adversity in my life, and it's not something that brings me down. I shine during those moments. Now I want to talk briefly about the word survival and what it means to me. I don't look at Alone as a survival show, because to me, Alone is a survival show with a safety net, so to speak. Meaning you can tap out at any time. You can quit at any time. You're not out there in the desert on a motorcycle running out of gas with no resources, no phone, and really put in a survival situation. You're not. You can tap. This is not a survival situation. I think it's a show where we practice survival skills, and I think it's going to be extremely tough. But in the end, we can tap when we want to. We also have 10 items that we're allowed to take with us. And that's huge. And I think a lot of people that go on the show in previous seasons take that for granted. I think 10 items is amazing. Now let's get back to that word survival. To a lot of people, the word survival has a couple other words attached to it. One other word that you might see attached to survival is urgent. Another word might be emergency. Or another word might be like panic. Those types of words are connected, in my opinion, to the word survival. So if I decide that I'm going to go on this show thinking that I'm going on a survival show, then I have to attach those other words to the word survival. And I feel like that would make me be in a rush out there. It would make me be in a frantic kind of pace. And that's not the type of pace that I want to go if chosen to go on the show. So I choose to think about the show under the word wilderness living, or maybe extended camping or something like that. Because those types of words, in my opinion, bring down the urgency of the situation into a comfortable state. Like I'm relaxed out there. And I think that's where my mindset needs to be to focus on a show such as Alone. Now I want you to know who I'll be leaving behind if I was lucky enough to go on the show. As you know, I'm a single parent father. I've had my daughter since she was 10 years old. I got custody when she was 10. She's 15 now. I've also been dating a woman for about 4.5 years. And so I'll be leaving behind my daughter, my parents, my girlfriend, her 2 boys, and a bunch of dogs. So that's who I'll be leaving behind. I want to say one more thing in closing. And I think this is an important one for you guys to hear. And that is, everything that you see in this casting video and everything that I've talked about in this video is not everything that I am. I'm keeping my cards close to me, and I'll expose these cards of who I truly am, deeply who I am, if selected to go on the show. I don't want to throw it all out there right away because, once again, this is a competition that I'm trying to go on, and I'm in it. So folks, I want to say thank you for taking the time to sit with me on this video. I hope you got some good, useful information, and I really hope and pray that I'm given this huge opportunity to be a cast member of Alone. I realize that the cut is hard to make. I realize there was over 5,000 applicants for season 3, and as we know, they only choose 10 to participate as contestants. And I'm also thinking about one more thing, and that is, I'm not going to take this show for granted. I've seen people in past seasons quit way early, and that's not going to be me. I'm the type of person that, if given this opportunity, I'm not going to take an opportunity from someone else. So if I'm given this monumental, life-changing opportunity, I'm going to give it everything I got. I'm going to give it my heart, my blood, my soul, everything. So please consider me for season 4 or season 5 of Alone. Thanks for watching. Have a beautiful day. We'll see you. Bye-bye now.